All right, I'm going to try to explain hydration and how to figure it out so you can start doing your own recipes. It took me quite a while to break the math down, but I mastered it, you guys. I got to share it with you. Okay, in any sourdough recipe, you got your flour. 500 is the standard, or 1,000. Okay, that's very common. Okay. Hydration means nothing more the amount of water that you are combining with your flour. That is hydration. Hydration means how crunchy do you want your crust or how soft do you want your crust, okay? If you go the 60 to 50% hydration, you're going to have a crispy crust. You go 70 and above, you're going to have a super soft crust, okay? So just remind, crunchy, soft, okay? 60 below crunchy, 70 and above soft, okay? Now that we understand what each one does to your dough versus when you cook it, let's get into how you figure it out. If you wanted 50% super crunchy, you go 0.50 times 500 grams of flour. 500, this mathematical equation is telling you you need to add 250 grams with your flour, okay? Right here, you still want it crunchy, 0.60 times 500, your flour. It's going to tell you need 300 grams of water with your flour. You want it soft? 0.70 times 500, hence your flour. This is telling you need 350 grams of water in your recipe. You want it super, super soft? 0.80 times 500. This is going to tell you need 400 grams of water in your recipe. So just come down here and jot that down because it's going to be important. Follow along with me. So real quick, now I figured out I like my crust soft. I'm going to go, okay, my recipe. I got 500 grams of flour. I'm going to need 350 grams of water. And we'll get into the salt and honey in a minute. But this is just 2% of the total, okay, of your recipe. So most recipes, it's common, 10 grams. So I need 10 grams of salt and I need 10 grams of honey, okay? That's my base right there because I figured out what hydration I want to bake with today. And I just want to give you a minute to be able to screenshot this, okay? All right, just like that. I'll just give you a minute or two so you can screenshot it when you're watching the video. This is really helpful to write this down on a piece of paper so you can always figure out your hydration. What do you want? You can do anything, 75, 64, it's all the same. While you're screenshotting this, just a second, you could do a 68% hydration, just go 0.68. You can do a 75, 0.75. Okay? All right, now that we got that, let's move to the next step. A lot of people don't tell you that your sourdough starter, hence active yeast, comes into a major play with your hydration in your water, okay? In your recipe, what you got going on, okay? So let's do this. Here's your sourdough starter. 50% of your starter is water, and 50% of your starter is flour, okay? It's an even amount. My recipe calls for 150 grams, okay? I'm just giving you an example. That's what I use in my recipe, okay? 150 grams of starter. I'm going to come down here, okay? I know this is equal parts, 1 and 2, okay? 50%, 50%. I'm going to go 150 grams of my starter divided by 2 gives me 75, okay? So my water is 75, my flour is 75. This is going to come into play when I am doing my mathematics on my recipe, okay? All right, so here's my new number. I know I need this, but for my mathematics on this next portion that I'm going to be showing you, I know it's 75 water, 75 flour, okay? Because that's equal parts of 150. Now, you can even go down here. I try to give you another example. Your recipe calls for 125 grams, which is a really common amount. Okay? 125 divided by 2 is 62.5. Okay? So that tells you 62.5 of that is water and 62.5 of that is flour. which equals 125 grams. So remember these numbers. Okay, break that down. I would just want you to screenshot this for a minute. Okay, so you can get that. I'm trying to get it all in there for you. I don't know if I can, but try to screenshot that the best way you can. I'll go down a little bit, screenshot it, go up a little bit. Okay, so it's whatever your grams is divided by 2 will give you your exact amount, okay, of water and flour. Just keep that in mind. Whatever this is, divide it by 2, okay? Just like down here, whatever that was, I divide it by 2. These are really important to remember, okay? All right, let's move on. Okay, let's just talk about your salt real quick because we're moving along. I'm trying not to ramble in this video so it's not a whole long, hour-long one, okay? Okay, so your sourdough recipe always calls for 2% of salt, and I use honey in mine, so 2% of honey, okay? How do you get that percentage? You just go 0.02 times 500 will give you the percentage. Okay, whatever amount, maybe you're doing 1,000, just go 0.02 times 1,000 will tell you exactly how much to put that in there, okay? All right. So it will always give you the 2%. So 0.02 is 2%. That ends up being 10. Sorry, I didn't write that down. That's 10 grams, okay? 0.02 times 1,000 is going to be 20 grams, okay? I wrote that wrong, apologies. Okay, so 0.02 times 500 is 10. 0.02 times 1,000 is 20. That's how you figure out your salt. You just divide the 0.02 times whatever amount of flour you're using in your recipe. And it's always 2%, so just remember that. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this is how you figure this out, okay? Get you a new piece of paper. And once you do this 1 or 2 times, and you will absolutely find your exact recipe, what you love to use to get the certain amount of crust, okay? So it's only going to take you 1 or 2 times of doing this math on the paper before you'll remember the actual recipe by heart. Okay, so let's get into this. Okay. We wrote down what our math told us on the hydration thing. It told us we need 500 grams of flour, 350 grams of water, and then our 20 grams of salt equaled a total of 870 grams, okay? And always come up here, remember the math I showed you, how to get equal parts of water and flour out of your starter. This was our starter, 150 grams, which 150 divided by 2 told me it was 75 for the water and 75 for the flour, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. This is our recipe. We got our flour, okay? Here's our recipe right here, 500. Okay, I'm just going to go around the board. Okay, you're not going to do the starter, okay? Because your starter is going to be the 150, but we'll do it just, okay, starter, 150. Starter. Okay, don't worry about that. Okay, now we're going to come over to the water. We got our water, all right? That's telling us, our recipe is telling us we need 350 grams to have a 70% hydration, which I love that, by the way. That's mine. Okay, now down here, you're not really going to have to worry about it because that really doesn't come into a factor with your starter, okay? The salt and the honey was 10 grams of salt, 10 grams of honey, so they gave me a total of 20 grams, okay? Just like that, 20 right there. Don't worry about this one. This has nothing to do with this, okay? All right. So remember when I told you your starter comes into play with how much water and flour you're going to come into play with this? This is how you figure it out. All right, 500, you go 500, you take the flour amount, which is 75, okay? I minus that. And that gives me 425 grams. Okay, now I come over here. Take my water amount from out of my starter, okay? Because your starter is adding water and flour in it along with these two, so please keep that in mind. That's why people say to factor in what your starter amount is, because your starter already has water and flour in it, so if you're not calculating that, your recipe is going to be completely thrown all off. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, my recipe called for 350 grams of water. I come up here. This is telling me 75 for the water that's in my starter. Same thing. I'm going to minus this. This gives me 275 grams. Okay, and then on top of the 425 grams of my flour, 275 grams now my water, my starter stays the same. It's 150. It's already calculated in. Okay, so what's that give me? Okay, now I'm writing my new recipe. 425 grams, 200 of flour, okay, 275 grams of water, okay, 150 grams of my starter, and then my 20 grams of my salt and honey equals 870. It's the same amount, okay? Now, if you didn't factor in your starter, okay, this is going to be way over this, okay? If you didn't factor in your starter, okay, and you added that right here, 150 grams of my starter, you would end up having 1,200 grams instead of the original, what this called for, the flour, the water, and your salt. This is why when you do recipes, your dough comes out all slimy and sticky and gooey, and it doesn't do what you see everybody doing, because you're not calculating in the amount of water and flour that comes in with your starter. So that's how you do the math. You get your original recipe right here, okay? You know, your original recipe, you know, the 500, you just minus whatever your starter is, okay? Whatever flour, equal parts of flour it had in it, and you write it down there, you minus 500 minus whatever your starter is. And this is your new amount of flour that you put in your recipe. You do the same with the water. Whatever your hydration level that you wanted in your recipe, you just write it right here and minus whatever water you calculated that was in your starter. And this is your new one right here, okay? 275. You leave the starter alone because that, you know, you're already calculating in the water and flour, and you just add your salt and honey, or if you don't use honey, that's fine. Your salt and honey like normal. And that's it. That's how you can get to calculate in your, you know, your new recipe. How you get whatever hydration you want to break down, to figure out what your starter is, to figure out how to do that. I hope I made sense of this. I really hope. Oh, I really, really hope I did a good job for you. Let's see if I can write it one more time for you and make this make sense. Okay, let's start out. Our starter is 150 grams, okay? That's water is 75. The flour is 75. Okay, original. OG recipe, okay? From when we found out the hydration. 500 grams, 350 of water, 20 of salt, 870 grams total. I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to go 500 grams of flour minus 75 equals 425 flour. So you come back up here, write your new recipe. This might be easier for you to do. 425. Okay, we're going to write this right up here too. Starter, 150. Starter, flour is 125. Then I'm going to go my water, 350 minus 75. That was in my starter. That gives me 275. So we're going to go 275 water. And then come down here, my salt and honey is going to be the same as this. So just 20 grams of salt and honey. Or you can write 10 grams for your salt. And that equals the same amount. Just like that. I kind of do it that way too. I'll write the starter. Then I'll do the mathematics on, you know, my flour minus whatever my starter has in it. And I just do the math. That's how I get it every single time. And that's how I get to pick my recipe every time I want to make a loaf of sourdough bread. Or sometimes I'll pop over and I'll draw something like this, okay? I'll write little scribbles, 150 grams, and I'll know to subtract 75 out of the water and 75 out of the flour from this recipe. And I kind of just do sourdough recipe, 70%, 500 grams of flour, 350 grams of water and salt. And obviously I'll add my starter. And then I'll just come down here and I'll just do, it doesn't really matter how you write your mathematical equation. It just matters that you understood it, right? So you just come down here, 500 minus 75, that gave me the new one. 300 minus 75 gave me 275. So now that we got that, okay, and we figured it out, okay, so once I figured it out, this is how I do it. I get a clean piece of paper, okay, and obviously I already have this written down like solid or memorized because I already know what I'm doing. So now I know forever and beyond my recipe is going to call, because I like a 70% hydration, my recipe calls for 425 grams of flour. My recipe calls for 275 grams of water, 150 grams of active peak starter, 10 grams of salt, and 10 grams of my honey. And then I write this down on a piece of paper once I figured out my math, and I just go off this recipe every time. That's it. That's how I figured out my hydration levels, and that's how I get to do it. And believe you me, I've tried to watch videos. I've tried to watch videos after video, and most of them are like, it's that simple. You just take the starter and the flour equal parts and throw it in. It's not that hard, you guys. Yeah, it is. I hope I explained this to you the best way I know how, now that you mastered your 11-day-old starter and you kind of know what feeding ratios are, what active peak starter means, etc. I hope breaking down the hydration, how to get the certain amount of hydration, and realizing your starter, you have to include the amount of your starter in your recipe, and you have to subtract from that the flour and the water out of your recipe to compensate for what your starter already has in it, if that makes sense. All right, with that being said, hopefully, you kind of understood what I was doing and maybe screenshotted some stuff, and maybe you have to go back over this and kind of watch it 1 or 2 times. But I really hope this made you understand hydration and how important it is to calculate the amount of starter that you put in your recipe, and just don't go off the normal recipe without calculating in your starter, because there's a lot of recipes that are like, oh, 500 grams of flour, 350 grams of water, and it's calling for only 100 grams of starter, or it's calling for more. It's calling for like 175, 200 grams of starter. So that is really important for you to be able to factor that in. And once you get it down, like I said, and you get your recipe down, sit down and, you can calculate out a 60% and kind of do the math I showed you to, and just start writing down your own recipes, because it's never going to look like that. The 500 plus the, let's say 300 and the 10 grams of salt is always going to be a different recipe depending on what your starter has in it. Okay, so just be aware, and the reason why I'm warning you is because I had catastrophic mistakes making recipes and not realizing that they never calculated in how much was in their starter. So your recipe should always look something like this, a little bit different every time, which each percent of hydration. With that being said, I'm going to get off here and quit rambling. Comment below. Tell me if you understood this video, if this made sense, or it was like you completely lost, or however. I love your guys' feedback. Give this, You know, if you like the video, give it a like, maybe a subscribe. Other than that, may the odds forever be in your favor on your sourdough journey, and keep blazing your trail.